Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. Our first coincidence miracle today is a cliffhanger story. That makes us feel like we're hanging off a cliff. A woman wrote to us and tells us that she was walking down a path near a forest. Apparently it was a path where bikers frequented and rode their bikes. She was walking down the path, and she noticed in the corner of her eye on her right side a huge bear that she says was about 8 feet tall, coming toward her, coming out of the forest over a mound, or climbed over a mound to get to where she was, and was walking toward her. And she became extremely petrified and frightened, and she said that she was sure she was going to die. They were very close, I guess something like 20 feet, 30 feet away, and she was petrified, and she just thought she was going to die. And suddenly she hears people screaming and hollering, and she looks down the path, and there were 2 bikers who had seen what was going on, and they had stopped a distance, maybe another 20 feet in front of her, and they didn't approach and they didn't move either. But the both of them started screaming and clapping their hands and yelling and screeching as loud as they could with a piercing sound. And so she started doing that as well. And the bear turned around very calmly and just walked back to where he had come from. I guess he just got frustrated with all of the noise. But she relates to that she now has 2 friends for life. She apparently has bonded with those 2 people for doing that to help her. She didn't know what to do. She was not experienced on what to do about this. Fortunately, the 2 bikers knew that would work. And she was obviously not only thankful to these 2 people, but she relates to us that she has no doubt in her mind that God sent 2 people who knew what to do exactly at the right moment, because the bear was coming toward her before they stopped and started yelling and screaming. Our next coincidence miracle was really a very heartwarming experience for me. I was passing out cards during the summer at a park, And as I entered the park, I guess I passed out about 5 cards, and I saw one woman sitting alone on a bench. So I went by and gave her a card. She asked about the book. So I told her, what I tell most people, the significant things. Our book teaches people how to hear God's voice and understand God's speaking to them mentally, inspiring their minds throughout the day as we speak with God. He guides us, and in the process of being guided, we start noticing many miracles. And then I talk about how we have inner peace, because when we're listening to God and doing what He tells us, we experience an inner peace because we're seeing so many miracles. And then I explained and reinforced everything by telling her that there's been 10,000 saints in the last 2,000 years, so you don't have to take it from me. You can read any of the lives of the saints at all, 10,000 saints, and all of the saints talk to God, and all of the saints do what God says, and they tell us about these wonderful experiences. So my book has done a lot of research and puts all the proofs and all the evidences in one place. Even the fact that in the Holy Bible, God spoke to people 20,000 times in the Bible. So if you're reading your Bible every day, if you read the whole Bible, you'll be reading about 20,000 conversations that people had with God. Well, she was very excited about all that, and she said, would you do me a favor? And she pointed out her friend was walking along the seashore, and she said, would you do me a favor and go down and talk to her, because she's having a tough time right now, and I think she would be delighted to hear. So I went down, and I introduced myself, and I handed her a card, and she also asked about the book. I was amazed both of them had asked questions about the book. That had to be something they were inspired to do by God. Not everybody asks me, what the book is about. So when somebody asks me, I know that it's the Holy Spirit having them do that, so then I know to give my little speech. So I gave her the same speech, how to talk to God, how to hear God, etc. 10,000 saints and 20,000 times in the Bible. And then I told her there's 100 miracles from my own personal life in the book as well. She got choked up and tearful, and she said, this is really very apropos for me. I came here today with a friend of mine to clear my head, because I've spent my whole life being bombarded and insulted and torn, beaten down by my mother unwittingly. My mother didn't realize it, I don't think, but she'd always be faulting me about everything as I was growing up. And here I am now, 40 years old. I've had suicidal thoughts and depression, and fortunately I've found a great church where they've helped me and they've prayed over me, and I'm feeling a lot better, and I'm thinking a lot more positively now. And I think I've turned the corner, but I need something like what you're talking about. I need to know how to talk to God and hear God and ask Him to guide me in all of the events of my life. And, the depression was because my mother, I guess, meant well, but constantly faulting my looks and my dress and my weight and my decisions. It just made me feel so hopeless and worthless in my life. And I'm starting to come out of it, I think. So I really appreciate. And so I had a copy of a book with me, one of my books, so I signed it over to her. She was delighted, and I haven't heard back from her yet, but I'm sure it's doing some good. I'm getting great comments from people who do read the book. Our next coincidence miracle is one that I've experienced many, many times, and I think you've heard things like this in the past if you've been listening to these radio shows. I was passing by the path that's been created at this park for people to ride their bikes, and it's a walking path as well. And as I was walking past there, a couple, a man and woman, were walking toward me. So I handed out the card, and they stopped, and they were very interested in the topic, and Tony's 50,000 coincidence miracles. So they said, "What is all that about?" And so I simply explained how when we get ideas, the word ideo means I plus God, because deo is the Latin word for God. And I explained the word inspiration means that the Spirit is coming into us and talking to us. So when we get ideos and when we get inspirations, if they are good things, We're getting thoughts to do good things, and we think it's coming from God, and we call it an idea and inspiration because we think God has put the thought in our head. We should do it, because if you summarize all that, we think God is talking to us, putting thoughts in our minds and with inspirations and ideas. So if we think God is doing that and it's something good, like call your brother or call your mother or call your wife or bring flowers home to your wife, etc. And as a wife, maybe cook some favorite supper for the husband. But when we get these ideas, and I've done that many times in my marriage, and I was pleasantly surprised often when I did what God told me to do. It helped my marriage to become a better marriage. And they were totally stunned. And this happens to me so many times. That's why I know that the book that I wrote was inspired by God, because of this constant message. I'm always telling people the same message. I-deos and inspirations are clues that God is talking to you. I always get responses like this. These two people said to me that they were just walking along the path and they were talking about the same exact two words. They were both debating if they were getting ideos or inspirations, or was it something else that was going on. And they talked about the pros and cons of God and the devil. And here, I come along and give them a card, and they're talking about ideas and inspirations, and I come over and tell them about it. So not only were they surprised and stunned, but I was also, and I always am. I'm not making this up. I think this has happened to me 100 times in my life. I've talked about ideas, inspirations about 100 times when people said to me, "Oh, I was just thinking about the exact same thing." Our next coincidence miracle, or series of miracles, is from a truck driver who tells us he's been driving trailer trucks for 15 years, and he's saved about 8 lives of people in the process, because he's out there all hours of the day and all different days of the week, and he spots things where people need help. The first thing he relates to us, that he had a great experience in his life where he had a heart attack. He got rushed to the hospital. I guess it took a while for them to revive him. And he says that during the whole process before he got revived, he had actually seen heaven during this process. Whether it was a dream or was it inspiration, he doesn't know. But he saw heaven, and he met some relatives that he knew who had passed away. He really enjoyed the whole process. His relatives talked to him about things and explained how heaven was. And when he came back, after he came back to consciousness, he found out that his doctor had also experienced dying and going to heaven as well, and they had shared stories, and they both saw the same things when they were having this vision of heaven, and they've become great friends now, and they repeatedly talk about what they saw, and they both saw the same kinds of things. And then he relates to us one time, he was driving late at night. It was an isolated spot. And he saw a car had gone into the ditch and it was on fire, and it was a pretty isolated area. So he pulls the truck over, he crosses the median, gets over to the other side. The driver had gotten out of the car, but the car was on fire, and there was another woman stuck in the back seat. And he didn't know why he grabbed a crowbar on the way running over, but now he was glad he did, because he used the crowbar to open the trunk door and pull the woman out of the back of the car. And his pants got on fire. He didn't notice that until he'd gotten the woman out. So it was a great experience. He tells us he's many times stopped things like a rape in progress, or gave some resuscitation to someone he found who needed to be resuscitated. So he feels like God has used him ever since he saw heaven. He's out there helping people every day. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.